Morning, Matt. How are you?
Good morning. Good.
We've got FDA expectation that they're approving boosters with a modified formula.
Right.
That could be available as soon as, next week?
Yeah, I think within a week or two.
Wow.
So this is a bivalent vaccine, and what that means is it still has the original formulation of the vaccine that people have been taking for the last couple of years against the original strain, but now they also have some additional material that's going to be more effective against the Omicron variant. So the idea is that it's going to be a little bit more effective. It's going to give a little bit better protection, because what people found is that as the virus has changed over time, the vaccines are still very effective at preventing severe disease, hospitalization, things like that, but the ability to prevent infection, so just picking up the virus at all, that wanes pretty quickly after you get vaccinated or boosted. So depending on the age group, within a couple months, you have the ability to be infected again. And so I think the hope is that these are going to be a little bit better targeted at the current version of the virus that is spreading.
Is there something about the testing process for the new vaccine that it seems like it's out faster? And I heard that trials and human tests weren't as, I guess they weren't part of the testing.
Well, keep in mind that this is not anything new. This idea of a reformulated vaccine, we've been doing this for years with influenza. So it's a very similar idea, very similar process for looking at what the modifications are in the virus that's circulating and then going ahead and making those changes to the vaccine. So there's nothing different about the process that makes it, and nothing different about the ingredients that are in it. It's just a slightly different RNA, basically, the genetic material that they put in there that helps to target the virus. So I think that because nothing's changed with the protocols and the manufacturing and all that stuff, you can have that process go a little bit quicker.
The pandemic made the country realize that public health was important outside of those who worked in public health.
Very true.
Are there more students, more individuals getting interested in public health?
I hope so. I think that the students that I see in my courses, I think they have general interest in the topic, but I'm encouraged that when I get to the end of the semester, one of the things I ask them, one of the questions in their final exam is sort of what was something new that you learned or something that you weren't aware of, and it's always interesting to hear them talk about all the things that they didn't really understand, or a lot of them said, like, I had heard this, but I didn't really know what it meant, and so now I really appreciate sort of how we understand the stuff about the virus and the disease and things like that. And so I think that that's encouraging for me, because that's really what I was hoping for with this course that I developed, was to have students be able to walk away from it and say, oh, yeah, I have a better understanding of how this all works, and when I hear about stuff in the news, I understand the background behind it a little bit better. So,
yesterday, a government report released shows the life expectancy of Americans has dropped for the second time, and this is, I think, the first time that our life expectancy, we're going backwards. Is that of concern?
Yeah, the first time in 100 years that there's been 2 consecutive years of decline in the life expectancy. So yeah, it's not good, but it's not necessarily surprising. I think maybe if people haven't been as aware of what was going on, but I think that really sends it home as far as the impact that the pandemic really has had. And especially for certain populations, it's had really significant impacts. So when you look at Native American groups, for example, their life expectancy over the last 2 years has dropped by almost 6 years.
Wow.
Which is really, really dramatic.
That's amazing.
It really is. I mean, their life expectancy now is the same as it was in the 1940s. If you think about that for a second, I mean, that's kind of mind-blowing. I would have thought that we would be in a position where we wouldn't be going backwards like that. but it just illustrates the issues that some of these groups have had as far as access to healthcare, access to treatments, vaccines, things like that. And so I think it's concerning, but hopefully it is a temporary result of the pandemic, and I'm hoping that we'll see these start going back up then.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. 3 years ago, it was nearly 79 years.
Right.
Now 76.
Right.
Do you remember
years.
when you were young, reading the life expectancy in the textbooks? It was probably in the 60s. Yeah, I think it was. I always remember like seeing 72 and 74 when I was a kid. So
Always higher for women, which is kind of an interesting
Yeah.
thing to think about. I mean, and that's not just a recent trend.
Yeah,
If you
that's-
look back to the 1800s, it's always been that way. So brings up some interesting questions in class as far as like why is that?
School just started this week. What's it like at JC?
Well, we've got a lot of, we still have a lot of online classes. The students are really interested in doing more online things. So most of my classes are actually online. I've got one in-person class. But we, things are rocking and rolling on campus, and everybody's raring to go. So
have you started to look back through your classes at some of the data, or from the beginning of the pandemic, maybe things we did right, things we did wrong?
Yeah, I mean, a couple weeks ago, the director of the CDC basically came out and said, we didn't really do this right, and there's some big changes that we need to make. So I think that it's a fair question to think about what things did we do well and what things did we not do well, and I think that's important because I think I haven't heard anybody say this is a one-time thing and this is never going to happen again. I think that everybody has said we were sort of anticipating there would be something like this that would come about. Most people thought it would have been influenza and not a coronavirus, but that doesn't mean that there isn't another potential pandemic coming down the road, 5, 10, 50, I mean, who knows how many years, but we should be thinking about what things went well and what things didn't, and I think that the big thing that I've seen that I would say is the communication, the sort of back and forth, the CDC saying one thing and then saying another, I think really was problematic and really led to a lot of issues. So saying that we didn't need masks and then saying that we did and stuff like that, that I think fed into a lot of people's confusion and then led into a lot of people's sort of frustration when there would be mandates or whatever about different things because they weren't sure whether that was something that we were supposed to be doing or not supposed to be doing this. So I think having that clear, consistent message is really going to be important.
Yeah, definitely a lot to look back on and learn from. Thanks for being with us. Have a great holiday weekend.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Matthew Badtke from Jackson College. More of the morning show after this quick break.